Hi, Stacy. Good afternoon.
Hi, Margie. This is where I feel real stupid.
Hi, Stacy. You're very welcome today, and we're very excited to hear a little bit about your short past, because you're still young, one of the youngest Sisters of St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Yay! And you also have something unique in your past history. You went to the Sisters of St. Louis kindergarten here at Louisville complex.
I did.
How did you manage that? Your family was living nearby, or?
That's a really good question.
Because you moved then after that, I think.
Yeah, no, we were living in Canoga Park.
Well, that's my alma mater, Canoga Park.
We were living in Canoga Park, and I think this was one of the first kindergartens that opened up.
Yes.
So my mom must have found out about it and enrolled me in it. So.
And it was in the high school, or at the time?
It was in, I think, what's now the dance room, right across from the pool. That big room right across from the pool.
Right, yes, that was part of the high school. Okay, because it started in the pool room, and then it went over to the high school, and that had a classroom there, and then it ended up over where the regional office is.
Right,
So,
right.
well, that was an experience. Do you have any memory of, was it Mary Prendergast? Was it
Anne-Marie, Sister Anne-Marie Tulin.
Anne-Marie, so it was Anne-Marie Tulin,
Yeah.
okay. Wow. Do you have any memories? Are they vague, or?
It was in kindergarten that I just knew that I wanted to be a nun.
Oh, come on now, Stacy. That far, I don't remember anything except the boys. We were running after them in kindergarten, and a rocking horse, but that's about all. Well, that is something. That was in 84, 85 kindergarten.
65?
Well, it says...
1965 was in
Was it
kindergarten?
65?
Mhm.
Oh, okay, 1965. Okay, and so you had a desire to be a sister. You probably liked the habit, the TV,
And I liked the teacher.
and you liked Anne-Marie.
Everyone loved Sister Anne-Marie.
Yes, she was lovely. She was a wonderful girl. And then later on, you did go away. Your family either moved, or where did you go to grade school?
Went to St. Mel's.
Oh, you were. Oh, I didn't realize you were St. Mel's. Okay.
We
It's not-
didn't move out until high school.
Okay, because it doesn't have that St. Mel's on the
Mhm.
on this list here. Okay.
And I went to St. Mel's. I wasn't supposed to because we were
Mm.
from Canoga Park.
Okay.
So we should have gone to St. Joseph's.
Or Our Lady of the Valley.
Or Our Lady of the Valley. But both of my grandparents on both sides were some of the founding members of St. Mel's.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
And they gave, the seed money, or however it's done, where you start, with the pledges and that kind of stuff. So both of my grandparents would have been the founding members. So they were good friends with Monsignor O'Connor. So when it was time to find a school, he took us in.
That is very interesting. Sr. O'Connor, yes, my parents remembered him. And then from St. Mel's, you went to high school where?
Out in the desert, public school.
Oh, okay, the Desert High School. What was it called?
Quartz Hill High School
What desert is that?
at the Antelope Valley.
Okay. Huh, that's where you moved then, your family moved.
Mhm.
And then how did you turn around after high school and get interested in joining the Sisters of St. Louis? Because you wouldn't have seen them in high school, you saw them in grade school, St. Mel's. And who were some of the sisters in St. Mel's, maybe, that made any impression on you?
When I went to St. Mel's, I had Sister Anicetus, Ann Finnegan,
Okay,
and then I had Marcia Foley,
I remember Marcia. She's gone back to Ireland now.
and then in the early years, I think Dorothy was a principal, and then I think Patricia McGahan was a principal,
Okay.
and then I had Carmel Donahue,
Oh,
Bridget Flannery,
yes.
Angela Dolphin,
Okay.
and then Candace was the principal.
Okay.
So I think in some ways each one of those sisters influenced
That's
me.
right.
But in 6th grade, I caught Candace as she was walking to lunch. I had figured out when she went to lunch. So I stood in a place where I knew she would pass by so that I could ask her when I can officially enter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it
Grade school.
it never went away.
Never went away.
Yeah.
So you kept that seedling in you even in high school years.
Yeah. And in some ways, I stayed connected. I had friends down here, so I was down here a lot and over at Mel's a lot and volunteer at different things.
And then actually in 1981, you entered the novitiate.
That would be right, yeah.
And was it here, or was it the one in
Holy Family.
It was Holy Family. Oh, so you actually, and so you didn't enter here in the Louisville complex here?
No, I did my postulancy at St. Bede's, and Margaret Hosty was my director. And then I went to the novitiate at Holy Family, South Pass.
Okay, that's very different than other experiences of people.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. And then you weren't able to stay in Holy Family because they wanted it back. And where did you all go then?
We came up here, and
Louisville,
and we're
okay.
spread out in whatever available room there was. Finished my college that year, and then moved on to my first teaching experience
St.
in
Louis, France.
St. Louis, France, yes.
I have that here, St. Louis,
Yeah.
France. That was in 1985 to 87.
Yes.
Very interesting. 5th grade teacher and then 7th grade teacher, San Miguel. Were we in San Miguel, in inner city?
We just, I was part of the, I think I was part of the founding.
Yes, I think so.
Maybe Olivia Keogh was there a year
That's
before
right,
me.
and I think Janet.
Janet went when I went.
Okay, so we were in, and that was just a short stay there, that inner city school, San Miguel.
And Rayfield was there as well.
Right,
She went with us,
right.
yeah. I was there 2 years.
2 years. I can't remember how long we actually stayed there. And then you went to Joseph's, St. Joseph's in Long Beach.
Mhm, yes.
And then a very different ministry arose, and that was in 1992. And where did you go in 1992?
Yeah, I volunteered to go to Ahoskie, North Carolina, to be part of that foundation.
And that was I can see Ahoskie now. Thank God I finally got to visit there. You enjoyed that. I heard a lot about you from people there when I was in Ahoskie. You enjoyed that missioning?
It was very different. It was good. It was good. It was good, but it was hard. And what was hard was that I taught in public school.
Yes.
And that was real a challenge because I hadn't, been part of that. And what was hard about it is seeing how the kids, the kids were so low academically, and it didn't need to be like that. But it was just the system and the politics surrounding
Yes.
the system. And but what was neat is no one in the public school ever cared what I did, and I really could have taught anything. So I didn't teach what I was supposed to teach because it was unreasonable for the kids given their ability level. So I taught what the kids needed, and it was neat how they grew and changed.
And what was that? What did you?
I taught math and science initially, but again, looking at how politics is so much a part of the public system. They had unreasonable expectations of the kids, teaching things that the kids weren't able to learn. They couldn't. So I just taught them what they needed, and they grew, and it was neat. It was just neat.
And the families were supporting you, or?
There's no contact with the families.
Much-
Very different system than Catholic.
Very different system
Yeah.
than Catholic school, yeah. And were you able to instill some of the charism of Sisters of St. Louis? Did you, I suppose you did for transformation, you were helping to transform and heal what the students, looking for what the students most needed and not what, quote, the school wanted you to do.
Well, it was interesting. Like when I first went there, I didn't know what I could do. I didn't even know if I can go by Sister Stacy or if I had to be
Okay.
Miss Reineman or whatever.
Right.
But I thought I would just push the envelope and just start off with Sister Stacy until they told me I couldn't, which they never did. And but again, there was a lot I didn't know what I could do and what I couldn't do. And at the beginning, the kids' way of communicating was screaming, and they would yell at me. Like if I didn't pronounce their name right, they would literally yell at me. And so it took me a little while just to find my bearings, and I got to the point where I would just have them step outside and I would just talk with them and just tell them, I'm not yelling at you, don't yell at me, and just a real soft voice. And it was fascinating after about a month how that became the tone in the classroom.
Because they were
Where-
used to other methods of teachers, I can imagine.
I would
Same thing
imagine.
in Brazil.
Yeah.
The same feeling, yeah.
So there was a nice calmness, and I think kids felt respected and maybe felt loved. I would visit the kids, some of the kids in their homes. You know, if I got donations or something, I would buy them pants or buy them something that they needed or whatever.
And tell us a little bit about the population you were teaching, a little bit about the population in Ahoskie, because it's a small town, it's not big, and it has changed. As when I was visiting there, the sisters were even saying it has changed. The population would be a lot of migrant workers, and
Now
now
it's migrant workers. When I was there, there was the African Americans, and then there were the whites. So in the school, that was another thing that was kind of hard, is the school would say that the students were mixed. We're all mixed, but they weren't.
no.
On this side of the hall over here were all the white kids, and maybe the higher level African American kids. And on this side of the hall here were mostly the poor African American kids. And that's the side of the hall that I had, which is what I would have chosen if I was asked anyway. But it just wasn't fair, because you need a nice mix in a classroom in order for everyone to benefit. But, you know, I worked with what I had, and
And it was a large school, was it? Are we talking grade school, high
it was
school?
middle school,
Middle school.
and there was about 1,000
Wow.
6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Yeah. So I taught 7th grade my first year, math and science, because they didn't know what to do with me, given a California credential. They didn't understand how to
Oh, yes.
read the California credential. So the next year, what I heard is they needed a strong disciplinarian in 8th grade, working with some of the same kids that I had had in 7th grade. So they moved me up to 8th grade, and they had me teach language arts. And yeah, I think it was just language arts.
You had to be very flexible and courageous to kind of adjust yourself to what was needed and to a whole different system after the system here. Yeah,
Very different system.
very good, very good. And church-wise, tell us a little bit about the religion in Ahoskie. It was very low percent Catholic. Mostly Baptists.
Mostly Southern Baptists,
Southern
yeah.
Baptists, which I experienced too, and interesting. But there's Baptists and there are Baptists. I went to some classes for Bible, and they were very progressive Baptists. I enjoyed it, you know. But it was a challenge for our sisters. And before our sisters went there, the Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Mary were there, RSHM. And it was interesting, I guess, to be in that kind of a population, you know.
Yeah. When I was there, we pretty much were just involved in the one church in the area,
Okay.
and there weren't a lot of Catholics. After I left is when Bridget and Teresa became, started working in Scotland Neck, that little church.
I love the name of that, Scotland Neck.
Yeah, and then the population started changing to where
Yes.
it was more and more
Yes.
migrants.
Migrant.
And so they went and learned Spanish, and then then that opened up a whole new ministry for them.
It did, yes.
Yeah.
So that wasn't your experience?
That wasn't mine.
Okay.
No. No, we couldn't even find a tortilla in the store to buy. You know, there was no
I know.
no hint of Mexican culture. So.
But
No.
the Baptists had their sweet tea
Mhm.
and their fried chicken
Mhm.
and whatever.
Barbecue.
Barbecue fried chicken.
Mhm.
Very interesting. I had fun with the accents because I kind of thought they were putting it on, but they weren't. Was the real accent, you
Mhm.
know, the Southern. I had never spent any time in the South. Very interesting. Then from North Carolina in '94, you did a small stint in Our Lady of Grace, but you were still attached to Ahoskie, kind of. You hadn't completely moved on. In fifth grade and 8th grade, or 5th to 8th grade?
I taught 7th grade. I taught 7th grade homeroom, but I taught social studies to
Okay.
everyone 5th through 8th, which I am not a social studies person, but you know, it's one
You
of those
fit
things
in.
you had to fake
You're
it.
very flexible. You fit in.
You had to fake it, yeah. But I was there for a year. I came back just to get my visa and get all my shots and get all that kind of stuff. So it was a 1-year stint.
Yes, you had to get shots and prepare for another new experience. In
Mhm.
1995, you volunteered to join our sisters, our African sisters, Ghanaian sisters in Oku, Ghana.
Right.
And how was that, and how did you come about wanting to do that, or what inspired you to be a volunteer for Ghana?
When I was in North Carolina, I got a call from the central team. They were looking at the possibility of starting a new foundation, I think in South Africa. And they wanted to, so they were looking for sisters that would be interested in volunteering for that. And no, I think a letter went out or something asking for volunteers, and
so,
I
yeah.
responded to that. That's how it was. And then they chose not to move in that direction, but then the central team called me, and they wanted to move in another direction and have more internationality in the
Right.
regions.
Mobility, I think, yeah.
Yeah, mobility. So, so they asked me if I'd be willing to go to Ghana. So, so that started that. Yeah.
From Ahoskie, North Carolina to Ghana, Oku in Ghana. And you were there for 2 years, Stacy.
Just about.
What was that experience initially like for you?
Well,
Very different.
yes. The second day in the country, I got very, 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 very sick.
Oh, yes.
Very, very sick. So
Second day.
it wasn't a good way to kind of start off the experience. But when I went out to Ghana, when I went to Oku, I don't know, it's kind of funny, you know, the journey that you're on, not only the physical journey, but emotionally and mentally and everything, the journeys you go on in these kind of places. But I went thinking that I was going to do all these great things and accomplish so much. But being in a different culture, I was in a place where I couldn't even boil an egg.
My goodness.
I didn't know how to work. You know, there was no electricity, there was no gas, there was no running water. So even simple things I didn't know how to do. So, you know, a feeling of helplessness, really. I was not expecting the loneliness. You know, being in a place where no one, they spoke English, but not my English.
Yes.
So,
And hard to understand English.
and hard to understand. And if I maybe said something that maybe was a joke or something, or was a typical saying here, a phrase we might use here.
It didn't go over.
It didn't go over at all, and it was misinterpreted. So I just learned not to say anything. But I wasn't ready for the loneliness, really. And when I got there, it turned out that there really wasn't a job for me to do. I'm not really sure what happened, but they didn't really need me in school because my accent couldn't be understood.
Wow.
And
they were mostly school sisters at that point there, and
then one nurse.
nurse.
Yeah.
Okay. Did they have a little health post, or?
Yeah, we had a clinic that was just 2 years old. And there, you know, there wasn't much for me to do there, little bits. I just did little bits like paperwork and that kind of stuff. So I had about 6 months of not much to do, which, you know, the neat thing is that it almost became like a second novitiate, where I needed to get myself in a routine just to keep myself sane. So, you know, I had prayer and got back into the rosary and spiritual reading and stuff that you know, it's hard
Yeah.
to find the time to do
That's
here.
right, yes.
And so it was great for me. It really was like a second novitiate. And then after 6 months, everything changed because Esther, her mom, died. She was the nurse, and she needed to leave, and she was gone for 6 weeks
Wow.
just because of the way the funerals are and stuff. And then the other two sisters in education, one came over here for a month, Helena, and then another one, it was vacation time, so she left. So I was the only one there
Oh, my God.
in the village. And Scylla was there, though, as a hermit.
Okay, yes.
So she offered to come out and be the nurse, do the nurse.
So you
So,
actually got to work with Ancilla. Oh,
Yes.
a saint.
yes, so things changed quickly where I became the administrator, you know, for lack of a better word, of the clinic. And Scylla had an interesting way about her. She had a way of just kind of putting little bugs in your ear. And she told me one day, she said, check out this file. And I had no idea why she wanted me to do that, but I checked out that file, and it turned out that she had written for a grant, and they had gotten the grant, but it never was delivered.
That's up your line.
So anyway, a number of things happened. I started organizing things at the clinic. A lot of things were donated, and were still sitting in the boxes that they were donated in 2 years later. Because it's just a matter of time, someone having the time to do
That's
it.
right.
So that's what I did. I went through things, I organized things, I set up a room for deliveries. I set up a baby clinic where every Tuesday the people didn't go to the farms because of the farm gods. They didn't want them going on Tuesdays. So that's when
The farm gods, Gods.
yeah, whatever kind of, you know, their beliefs,
Yeah.
you know, they couldn't go to the farms on Tuesdays. So we had a baby clinic where we would get the babies there, and we had a whole process. So we started that, an outside baby clinic, to kind of save Esther from the inside. So it was neat just how things started happening. And then I got transportation into town, and I started pursuing that grant. And it turned out that it was actually stolen, that our
Oh, my
grant,
goodness.
someone bribed the person that was supposed to bring it out and got it sent to another clinic.
Oh,
So
my God.
anyway, I made many trips back and forth. I was able to get that delivered, and I think it was like a week before I left Oku. This big, huge semi-truck came out,
Oh,
and it had all of our
wonderful.
stuff in it. So there's a number of different things like that.
Yes.
Getting the clinic licensed through the state. I worked on that for the whole time I was there, and that finally happened as well. So I got to where it was 6 months of little to do, but I think I found myself,
Sure.
and then a year and a half of just crazy busy.
It's like the seed in the dark earth. In
Mm.
those first 6 months, things were happening, but in a different way. And then, that's amazing. It's an amazing story. And finally, getting the material from this grant that was detoured or whatever, what was actually in the truck that came just before you left?
It was
Ghana?
everything to outfit a clinic.
Wow.
So it was proper beds, it was proper equipment, tables, lights. It was $20,000 worth of materials, and this is $20,000. 25 years ago? So that was a significant amount, and with it came 3 guys to install it all.
Oh, wow.
So it was wonderful. It was really a
I
wonderful
bet the
gift.
sisters who left you alone thought, well, let's leave her alone again.
And then the government sent a message with these 3 guys to tell us that the licensing board would be out the next week. So everything I had worked hard for a year and a half, it all happened the week before I left, which was really, really neat.
Thank God it happened the week before you left.
Yeah.
It was gratification, because so many things that we begin, we don't see the results of, but that was worthwhile. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
So they knew you were only going to be 2 years in Ghana. Did you have any inkling of wanting to stay on, or had you pretty much decided that was what God had wanted?
I had no more inkling of staying on, no.
And when you came back, you came to Corpus Christi, where I was. We spent a year together in Corpus Christi, and I remember you coming back and just full of everything. And then you started digging into our problems there in the house with the phone, and you kept changing the phone company to get a better deal.
Oh.
And we had a good time that 1 year. And that 1 year was kind of just an in-between year. You taught a little bit in the 2nd through the 7th grade. What did you teach in?
I taught math,
Okay.
2nd through 6th grade, and then I
6th or
taught
7th,
religion in 7th grade.
Okay, good. And that was a nice, that was a year. You're very pliable and flexible, as I keep saying. And then another challenge came your way, which you are still facing and still, I think, enjoying, because you have a lot of enthusiasm when we talk about El Monte and Our Lady of Nativity Convent in El Monte. And our sisters, who were quite elderly when you even began there, and have really done a wonderful job also in the community of our sisters there. Tell us a little bit about the principalship at Nativity. You were asked to take principalship. Who was right just before you in Nativity?
Dorothy.
Okay,
Flaherty.
Dorothy, all right. Okay, that's when she probably got ill.
Not yet. She
Okay.
wasn't ill yet,
She wasn't ill yet.
shortly after.
So you have been there for about 19 years now,
20 years.
coming up to 20 years.
My
Wow.
20th year. Yeah.
Wow. So did some of the skills from Ahoskie and Ghana help you cope with the new challenge of a school, a grade school, a large grade school in El Monte?
I think what helped me the most was working through the loneliness of Ghana, because being a principal is a lonely position. And every decision, the buck stops here. And no one understands what it's like unless they've done it. And even the teachers don't understand, the parents don't understand. Everyone thinks they know what's best. So that probably helped me more than anything, is just having had worked through that.
And you have your master's in school administration, so that helped you a little bit there. And a second master's in Catholic school inclusion. What does Catholic school inclusion mean? And was El Monte a good place for you to put some of that experience and learning into vogue?
That wasn't something I ever planned on doing. What happened is, I don't know. When I started finding my footing at Nativity and started getting more comfortable with, how I was doing the job. What has always bothered me about Catholic education is how it has become, in my view, for the elite, for people that can afford it, and for people that can pass the test to get into it. And to me, that's not how it should be. It should be available to anyone who truly wants a Catholic education. So I decided to open the school up to anyone that wanted to come, and there's a big pocket of poverty in El Monte.
And you have a multicultural influence there, 3 or 4 different ethnic groups as well.
Right. We have Vietnamese and Filipino.
And Mexican
Hispanic.
American. Hispanic. Wow.
So anyway, so we started having, we started with just a few. I really thought many kids would come and take advantage of, this reduced tuition, or free, just depending on what they could afford. But not too many people came. Only, I think, about 4 kids came. And I was really expecting the school just to be filled. I had to learn, though, that, within the culture in Mexico, you don't even hope. There's no reason to even hope to get into a Catholic school.
Wow.
Because it was for the elite. So they didn't hope. And I think what I needed to do is kind of break that myth. So we worked really hard over the next few years, particularly at Our Lady Guadalupe, a Hispanic parish about a quarter of a mile away, with the people. And so every year more and more would come, and then word started getting out. What started happening too, though, is kids were coming with learning disabilities. More and more kids were coming with learning disabilities. So my feeling is I want to help kids, but if I can't really help them because of their disability, then it's unjust to keep them. But I had this sense that a lot of kids could get help with just some minor changes, that we didn't need huge, big programs, sometimes just minor changes. I just didn't know what those minor changes were. So the Archdiocese, working with Loyola Marymount, started this Catholic school inclusion.
Okay.
So the whole point of it is, how can we help kids in our setting, given our reality, our financial reality, and how few staff that we have. So that's the whole point of the program. So it was a wonderful program that Loyola Marymount offered, and they offered 90% tuition reduction if you're working in a Catholic school, which was a huge gift.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a 2-year program. So I went and did that, and then things just kind of evolved. Nothing was planned. It was just kind of evolved. So we're at a point now where I've got 4 students with Down syndrome. This year we took a family whose daughter has moderate autism, and she needs a one-on-one aid, but the mom's been able to work that out through the insurance, which is really neat. So. And it's just so neat to see how these kids have grown, because the option given all of these parents was to be in a special class in public school with kids with Down syndrome and autism, so there'd be very little stimulation. And what we've seen with all of these kids is language development that was not seen before. And even the little girl with autism, last Friday when she was leaving, she turned to Martha and she said, "Goodbye, Miss Martha."
Wow.
She has never said that. Mom burst into tears.
Wow.
Because it was huge. And she hugged another child in class, which the child has never done either.
Yes.
So we're seeing these little things that
Inclusion
it's just-
works
yeah.
if we can have the patience. And
Yeah. So I don't worry about whether we're meeting grade level standards. I don't worry about, California state standards. I don't worry about all that. I just worry about, can the kids be the best they can be? And those kids with Down syndrome and autism, if they can just grow to be who God wants them to be, then they're good.
So how is your enrollment and how are your finances? Are they
We're good.
you're able to keep going?
We're good. Yeah, this year we're at 250 kids, which is quite good. Financially, we're fine. I don't really understand why we're fine. Because in some ways we shouldn't be, given the amount of kids that we're helping and how low our tuition is. But people are good, and people have donated quite a bit of money. And when I least expect it, a check arrives in the mail. So, I don't worry about it anymore.
You've left it in God's hands, and he or she is much better at administering all of this. That's true. And then you have a wonderful knack of being able to ask the right people at the right time with the right smile or whatever, and get all kinds of donations from companies. And tell us a little bit about some of the technology you've been able to receive by just asking sometimes, or knowing how to ask or who to ask. Or
Yeah, there's a lot of funding sources out there. Government funding, like the No Child Left Behind Act, and I've just learned how to
use the system.
How to use the system, yeah. And so I've gotten an awful lot of technology through the different title fundings. I've just learned what I can do, and I do it. And then there's just an awful lot of people that I don't even know how I've met them. I've just met them in different ways, and they have been very generous. Grants, I've gotten an awful lot of grants. So we were able to get air conditioning for the whole school, had the whole bathroom totally refurbished. We have smart boards in every classroom. Every child has an iPad.
I don't even know what a smart board is. What's a smart board?
A smart board is basically like a huge iPad on the chalkboard.
Oh, okay.
To where a child can go up and interact. It's an interactive whiteboard, so they could touch different things and interact with the education, whatever they're learning.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, from my times of visiting El Monte and visiting the school, I really liked what you've done with the whole campaign. I don't know if you call it a campaign, Character Counts. How did that all begin? And your colors and your signs all over around the school. How did that come about?
Because I say yes to everything, and I mean everything. If people bring diapers into school, I say yes because I'll find someone to give it to. So I say yes to everything. And I don't know, the Archdiocese came out with a character development program. They were working with Michael Josephson, who has developed the character development program. I believe he started it primarily for businesses, to bring character into businesses. And then the Archdiocese worked with him, and this would have been like 15 years ago,
Yes.
16 years ago, to bring it to schools. And so they needed some pilot school. So I always volunteered to be a pilot school because I always get something free. So I volunteered for this. I got some people trained. And it just kind of took on a life of its own, where, there's the 6 pillars of character:
Right.
trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And what's neat is from the 3-year-olds all the way up to 8th graders, it's a common language.
They know them all.
And the secretary, the maintenance man, everyone is using a common language. So, you'll hear the little kids say to one another, that wasn't very fair, or that wasn't very trustworthy. So it's neat in that way. And this is actually National Character Counts Week this week.
Okay,
So we have something going on every day, and big prayer service at the beginning and at the end.
wonderful.
So
I was very much impressed by that. And then I was there some other time, and the teachers were all having a photography class. You got cameras for them,
That was through title funding.
right?
There's a certain...
They learned how to work the cameras.
Yes.
They weren't just a simple camera.
Yeah, it was, that was title funding that I got, Title II funding, where I've been able to get teachers iPads back when no one had iPads. I got that through title funding. Cameras, video cameras. I've been able to get all kinds of stuff through title funding to help the teachers. You know, it's all stuff you would use in the classroom.
I think you need to do a teacher's workshop on how to get stuff and take advantage of the system. That's wonderful. And the sisters and students, we've noticed too, and parents at Nativity, we forgot to mention that El Monte and Nativity School, Nativity Convent, was our very first convent that our sisters came, the pioneer sisters came to in 1949, and we are still there. So that's from 1949 till now. We have kept a constant presence in El Monte, in Nativity. So it's awesome that we have been able to continue there. But we've also noticed that you have been very aware of the needs of our missions in West Africa and Brazil. You and the school and the parish, mostly the school though, have done wonderful campaigns and been very generous to the missions, and we really appreciate it in Brazil. And you continue to do so. How are you able to do that in an area where you struggle financially at times and the people are not, families are not well off, but how do you manage to continue doing that? It's a wonderful, wonderful, generous offer to us.
I have worked in wealthy schools. I've worked in middle-class schools, and but I spent most of my life in the poorer schools. My experience has been that the poor are the most generous.
Yes,
and
we had that same experience in Brazil.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's because they can relate to suffering and what it's like to be poor. Mm-hmm. So, you know, what I have is a group of faculty that buy into my vision, which is key. And so they challenge the students, and the whole student council, it's just everyone has bought into the vision. So yeah, we have 2 major fundraisers every year for Brazil, where I think we're able to maybe make close to $10,000 a year, maybe. My 5th grade last year, the current 6th grade, they were kind of in a lot of trouble last year, and they weren't behaving, I can't remember what was going on, but they weren't behaving very well.
That's 5th grade, yes.
That was 5th grade, and maybe they were being selfish. They were doing something that made me go in and talk about the poor. And I started talking about the sisters in Ethiopia. And maybe I showed them a video or something. I can't remember exactly what I did, but I really talked to them about the poor and how people are suffering. So then, next thing I know, a group of 5th graders came to meet with me, and they decided that they wanted to commit to raising $10,000 before they graduate.
Wow. So
they started a fundraising last year, and just had another fundraiser 2 weeks ago while I was away in Italy. We have already donated 1,000 euros. We donated that a few weeks ago. They probably have made almost about $2,000 at this point. But they're really committed. Whether they actually make the 10,000 or not, I don't know. But they are so committed. They have written letters. So it's good for them.
It is, and it's something that will be with them the rest of their lives. Mm-hmm. They will be able to reflect back on all of that, and who knows what they can do in the future.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. Is there anything else we forgot? Well, I want to mention, too, that you have been a wonderful member of the community of our sisters who have lived in El Monte. When you first went there, who was there of our sisters in community?
It was Mary Kanhidi.
Okay, yeah, Mary.
Marilee,
Marilee.
Elizabeth, and Margaret, and myself.
Okay, and Mary Kanhidi was in a high school.
Yes.
She was
Bishop Amat.
transporting herself back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But the other sisters were actually involved in the school.
Right.
And then other people came and went.
Mm-hmm.
And you were able to keep the school going, your principalship, and yet be a faithful and generous and wonderful community member by keeping our 104-year-old Sister Elizabeth Gildee busy and active, going back and forth to Las Vegas that she loved, and doing things, I don't know what else, something about sports, is it the Dodgers or what?
The Angels.
The Angels, sorry
the Angels,
that they're
yeah.
not in the World Series, it's the Dodgers, but I'm sure Elizabeth won't mind that. But keeping her going, and now Margaret Eaton, who's 94 94?
Two,
Going-
92.
92.
Mhm.
Is there anything that we haven't mentioned, anything huge?
No, I think you got it
I
all.
think you're a credit, and we bless you, and we thank you for the blessing that you are to all of us, and to all the people you have served and all the children. Amen.
Thank you. Amen.